Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. We are on the air. This is Thesis.
I mean, the Persian Empire's army was so big, they would dry out the rivers. But Herodotus says that in his book. When all my life, growing up, through the 80s, all I remember being taught at school is that we should be colorblind. But now it seems like these people that call themselves progressives are looking back past the civil rights to where now I should care about what skin color I am or the other person is. Educate yourself, open your eyes. Don't be led around like sheep or cattle.
Government will always push its boundaries, no matter who is in charge.
Today's show, I wanted to talk about a little bit about like legalization and things like that. When markets get saturated, only the strong survive.
We see the crossover from what religion teaches us about behaviors, and we can see the proof in the science.
I'm not scared of the virus. I'm not scared of the pandemic. You know why? Because I know that there's something greater than all of this.
This is Thesis. Everything is everything. I am your host, J.Marie.
3, 2, 1, we are on the air. This is Thesis. Everything is everything. I am your host, J.Marie. How's it going out there, folks? Hope you're doing well. Thank you for showing up and hanging out with us today. Coming to you live from Zombie Land. Yes, sir. All right. Well, folks, I hope you find yourself well and healthy and safe. And I appreciate you spending time with us today. It's been a minute. We've been doing a lot of things. Got a bunch of new equipment in. I've been trying to learn it. It's rough. But we're trying to do a lot of things in the background right now as I'm doing this show. So we'll see how that goes. But again, I really appreciate you checking in and spending some time with us today. So I've been thinking a lot about what we are gonna dig into today. And it's something that I've touched on before, but I figured I figured we'd like dive into this topic that I've brought up a few times, but we're gonna try to break it down. We're gonna dig in and try to break it down some ways so maybe we can understand a little bit better of what this story is telling us. Because you know how we like to do here at Thesis, like we like to look at what we're reading and then examine it and filter it through different, disciplines or whatever, to kind of see what it's saying, so that's what we're going to do. And the study of religion and stories in the religious books are one of my favorite topics to talk about and to dig into, because this past week, once I figured out exactly, because it takes me a minute, I don't want to rush anything, so it took me a minute to kind of like, to see like what is it that we're going to talk about, right? What do I want to dig in, And so I started digging in a little bit. And so basically what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to explore the idea today of, okay, so it's not quite precisely Adam and Eve, right? But we're going to look at that story about the Adam and Eve people, and then, right, the whole theory of creation. But we're not going to dig in like in the Bible. We don't do shit like that here. We don't do church. We're gonna try to learn something. So we're gonna look at the story, right? But we're also gonna look at what evolution tells us and what science tells us, right? So we're gonna compare the two, because there seems to be, this is what I love of the conversation, is there seems to be, right, a battle between science and religion, creation and evolution, and the scientists, fight about evolution, and then the religious folks fight about creation, So I figured we'd dive in a little bit to maybe help us understand the story a little bit better. And I think, so see, as I've studied this, I've dug into this many times before, and I feel as though there has been some little hints revealed to us in what we're reading, right? So I want to point those things out, because then it kind of helps us come to a point to where we can say, because see, I don't want it to be, for me, for instance, I don't want it to be religion or science. No, my mind won't my mind doesn't want to allow me to do that. I want to find a connection between the two, right? So that's what we're gonna try to do. Okay, because there's a lot of language. The way the story is written in the Bible, let's say about the Adam and Eve person, and then there's a fruit. Some people say it's an apple, and the snake, and the tree, and all these things, right? So that story can be a little, well, I think to a, when we think things a little bit philosophically and break them down, you understand what maybe the story is basically stating, and something that is stating that jumps out to me is basically saying it's the same thing as what science tells us. you know and you might say, well, but it says about God and Adam and the rib and the dirt and all that. Yeah, sure. But remember, we've talked about how ancient people used to write their stories. They wrote it like if it was a movie sometimes, right? But even in that writing, even in that those style of writing that they do, there's truth or hints of some sort of historical record or something buried within the story itself that we are reading. Even though it might be embellished with God and he formed the man out of the dirt and all this stuff, right? Like, whoa, it sounds amazing, right? So like the way Herodotus used to write his stories, there's history in those stories that he wrote, but the style that he wrote them were, sometimes were a little fantastic or maybe embellished or something, you know what I'm saying? So we want to look for those hints that tell us, well, maybe this might be, embellished a little bit, right? As that, or we also want to look for areas that maybe we're confused, like maybe the humans got it wrong, right? Maybe the modern translation got it wrong, maybe the guy at the church got it wrong, right. So we want to look for those clues too, because as we're examining these things, we want to be honest with ourselves too, like, hey, look, I understand this and I don't understand that, but then we can deconstruct things and say, okay, let's see, what I'm saying. So we want to look at stuff like that also, you know and it's it's a fun examination because it seems like not that we're forced to, but modern society kind of seems to want to put us in a position where it's like it's either one or the other, right? And no, what we're going to try to do today is find that middle ground, not middle ground, but where it connects, that intersection of the two things, because there's a story of creation, that God created man, right? One man, one woman, Adam and Eve, and then they populated the entire earth. That story right there, when you compare it to, let's say, what evolutionary science has been able to find, you say, well, hold on, there's something there. There's a contradiction, or there's something that can't really be, you know, reconciled between the two things, right? Okay, but it depends if it, back to whether we have understanding or lack of understanding. Okay, so let's look at let's look at a few things first of all. Let's try to start. I didn't take any notes down or none. This is a topic that I think we'll be able to freely flow. So let's start at what we know, right? The first man, the first woman, that's it. Like, as far as we know, right? As far as some people tell the story, one man, one woman. There's no other people on the earth. Okay, okay. They're naked. They don't know they're naked. They eat some sort of fruit, and as soon as they eat that fruit, they're awakened. Right? Okay. Um. So people say that when we read the Bible, it's the literal word of God. Right? Okay. Now, there's hundreds of translations and variations of the modern Bible. So I would say, okay, well, which variation, which copy, which one is the exact, you know what I'm saying? Which one represents the real, true word of God? Because they've been translated, they've been rewritten. New Standard Bible, Old King James version, and then when you say it in Spanish, some words don't translate it compared to when you say it in You know what I'm saying? Okay. So 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 thinking philosophically, we say, okay, we know that part, so we accept that as let's say a starting point, right? Okay. So we're gonna leave that part out. So we're gonna look at the story, because then we can't say this is the literal word of God. First and foremost, if they were the first two people, who wrote it down? You know, if they hadn't made what, they already knew how to write. You know what I'm saying? They already had paper and pen and chisel. You know what I'm saying? So we can't think that way. We can't. We're philosophers. We don't think that way. We want to think broader than that. Okay. So this story was written, was told millennia after whatever this event was that we call Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden and all that stuff, right? Okay. So then we can say, okay, the story was written down way, way, way later than the first two humans, right? But science says, but wait, wait, wait. The Earth was populated throughout the regions of all kinds of, and then human species arose all over the planet through evolution, and you know what I'm saying? So there wasn't just like one man and one woman. What is this all about? Right? So then that's when we can say, okay, the style of writing that whoever originally told the story, wrote the story, the style that they wrote, they they wrote it in the way they did, where it's, the garden and God and a man and then the snake and the apple. Well, maybe not even the apple, because I think in the original translation in Hebrew, it doesn't even say apple, it says fruit. You know? Okay, now the fruit. What fruit, right? Like, okay, a lady bit a fruit and then they awoke and whatever. Fruit, fruit from the tree of knowledge, right? The tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? So it's the fruit of knowledge. So like when you work, you earn money, you make a living, and then we have the saying that we say the fruits of your labor, right? It's not an actual fruit. It's the fruits of your labor. Your labor produced this, what you have, your home, your car, you have some money. Those are the fruits that your labor produced. Okay? So the fruit that they had a taste of was the fruit that's produced from the tree of knowledge, basically, right? Of good and evil, between good and evil. So the fruit when you work is produced from the tree of your labor. The fruit that they ate from was from the tree of knowledge. So it wasn't an actual fruit tree in the garden where something's growing and you bite it with your mouth. No. Okay. So now we see that the word is being used metaphorically. The fruit, right? It's being used metaphorically to represent the product of something, and that something is the knowledge of good and evil. Okay, fine. So it wasn't a real fruit. Okay, so okay, good. We understand it wasn't a real fruit. Okay. Now, um, there's always been a clue, I think, right in front of us of what these people were. And see, and I think there's still a lot of confusion, because even though when I say it, who these people were, like if it was this actual couple. Now we'll get there, but let's look at it in a general sense, right? Because when we step back and when we look at things in a general sense, the picture gets a little clearer, because it's still kind of fuzzy. Este, okay, one of the clues that has in recent years really jumped out at me is the part where they didn't know they were naked, right? They were naked, but they didn't know that. Okay, and we've spoke how um, through the evolutionary, in our science books, and in we've seen it on TV or whatever, where they show the evolutionary line, right? It's almost like an ape, and then the ape starts kind of getting upright, and then at the end you see the modern, the modern human, right? Now, modern evolutionary biologists and scientists, they don't that's not it's not evolution wasn't linear quite like that, because we didn't evolve from chimps, or or the early man, as far as evolution is concerned, early man look more like our modern apes, so that picture isn't quite correctly because it's not linear. It's more like a branch. Each branch of different species evolved in different ways. So the branch that we are connected to, let's say some of the apes, we come off of the same branch, so it's not linear. So we didn't evolve from apes. Early man was more like apes. Early man was more like an ape that we know today. We had more hair. We were hunched over. We didn't have language. You know what I'm saying? Our brains were smaller. All kinds of things, right? We probably lived on trees and stuff like that. A step. So when we take that into consideration, we can say, okay, there was a time in our there was a time in mankind's past where we were more like an animal, where we didn't have cities and we didn't have societies, we didn't have things like that. We were more like an ape. We were furry. We were naked. What I'm saying? We didn't have clothes. Why? Apes don't cover themselves. They don't know what nakedness is. In the mind of the ape, has no conception of what naked is or why we would want to cover ourselves. It doesn't even register in their mind. Okay? So if we take the timeline back to early man, there was a time when man and woman walked around naked, right? Without clothing, and they didn't know they were naked. Like the modern ape. The gorilla at the zoo, he doesn't know he's naked. He's just being a gorilla, you know? He's just there being a gorilla. Um, so if we think back, the science says at some point humans were like this. So the story in the Bible says Adam and Eve, these people, whoever they were, are naked and they didn't know they were naked. That gives us a clue. What? Their conceptualization of these things that we know today, nakedness, clothing, all this stuff, they didn't know any of that. Why? Because of the present state that they were in during this evolutionary time frame. Now, this story gives us a snapshot of something that was evolutionary. It wasn't a couple that beat and then like this thing happened in a week. They got in trouble and they got kicked out. No. This story is a condensed version of something else that took longer. But it tells a story and it gives us clues of something. The very first part, because look, the way the book is written, it talks about creation and then animals and then fill the world, and then it starts over and then it says the Adam and Eve story. And scholars and all these folks who've convinced themselves that these are the literal, absolute literal words of God, then they can't reconcile the two. But look, it says here, but then it starts over. So where's the beef? Where did Cain and Abel or whatever, where did they find wives, right? Or whoever, the one that killed the other one, where did he find a wife? And then the scholars, the biblical scholars, unfortunately, I feel bad because they forced themselves to say, well, he ended up marrying one of his sisters. When the scripture doesn't say that. So as philosophers, we can't fall into that trap because we need to follow what is told to us. We can't assume. Now, if I was coming to you from let's say a theological standpoint, I wouldn't want to do that either. Unfortunately, in the church, they're willing to accept these assumptions. that the world is 6,000 years old, that Cain or Cain, who killed Abel, whatever, right? That he married his sister. You know what I'm saying? But when it doesn't state that in the writing. So why would we fill these gaps in with stuff that man has come up with, not stuff that was written? Okay, literal word of God, you say, then why add to it? Why subtract from it, right? Okay, so we're philosophers though. So we're going to look at what's written, what's told to us. If he found a wife, that means there was already more humans on planet Earth at the time of these people, whoever this couple was, whoever, you know what I'm saying? Whoever these couple, there was already humans because he found a wife outside of his family. They got kicked out of the garden or whatever, right? Right? We're philosophers. We don't play that shit, okay? Okay. So we're getting clues and hints to what this story is more like. It's a story, because nobody was there to write it down. It's a story that has some hints of scientific knowledge. The humans not knowing they were naked, a time before they even wore clothing. Science says yes, there was a time when humans roamed the earth in packs or whatever, and they didn't wear clothing. Why? Because they were like the apes. There was no need to. There wasn't that thing in the mind. Whatever it was, there wasn't there. Okay, so we get a little better picture of what, not who Adam and Eve were, but what they were, or what that story is telling us about what, who they, because it's a story that's telling, remember, a condensed version of human human past, you know. Okay, so then we can look at what science says a little bit, right? Because this notion of whatever it was that Eve uh, did, right? Because it says she did something, right? She bit the apple and then she gave it to Adam, right? So something about the female species, something that the female species did that changed the course of human evolution. Or let's say something she did changed the course of human history. That's what the story says. This thing that she did, this fruit that they tasted, this fruit that they got a taste of, changed the course of the path, the course of human history. And it's about the woman, right? The woman. Oh, and speaking of, y'all have heard of the story Pandora's box, right? It's an old Greek story, and it's similar. It's about this box that was given to this woman, and they told her never open it, because when you open it, it's gonna unleash like all these ills on society and whatever, right? And then she opened it because of whatever curiosity, whatever, and it unleashed all the ills and whatever on mankind. Now, I went over the story before, actually. I mean, I've heard it over audio, and I went over it a couple of times. As them, I'm not too well known with the precise details, but that's the general sense of the story. Is she opened this box and something happened that changed the world. Okay, so woman was blamed for something in this story that we call Pandora's box. The female was blamed for something. Eve, and I say blamed, not blamed, but responsible for something. Pandora opened the box. She was responsible for opening that box. Eve was responsible for something about this fruit. It says she tasted it first and then she presented it to her mate, right? That's what the story says. So the woman did something. Now, something so amazing that I caught a glimpse in some lecture. I think it was Jordan Peterson was giving a lecture, and he studied biological evolution, evolutionary biology, And in one point he mentioned sexual selection in many in many mammal species of mammal, the female sexual selection, because the woman, right, the female species of ape gets to choose, and usually when you look at apes, let's say it's the strongest man, the strongest male, he already beat everybody up, and that gives him, it says he has the choice of women, but the women have the choice. The female has the choice, because they're not going to choose the guy who's weak, who got his ass kicked. They're gonna choose the big, strong guy who who can handle up some. You know what I'm saying? So the woman has the choice. The man, the male species has to compete for the females acceptance or desire. Or, you know what I'm saying? So it comes from the female side. You know, uh, selection. The female is the one who's going to choose who to mate with. Let's say in the animal kingdom, who to reproduce with. Who of this bunch of apes will I have a better chance of having some good offspring? Well, maybe that big burly badass back there who just beat the shit out of them other dudes for slacking off. So something about the female species that she has some sort of power, right? Well, not power, but you know what I mean? Like when we're thinking about it in that sense. Now, let's think back to Adam and Eve. Whatever this fruit was, it came from that tree of knowledge. So let's ponder a few things. Like right now, we're thinking out loud. We're gonna think things through a little bit. Okay, fruits from that tree of knowledge. The knowledge. What knowledge? The knowledge, maybe because it says from good and evil, but there's knowledge, right? It's the of being able to choose a mate. What's the fruit of that? Good offspring. Ooh, could it be that early primate females figured out as the brain grew, as the mind evolved? Could it be that they figured out, hey, I have a better chance of producing good offspring if I choose the bigger, stronger, whatever. That's knowledge, and the fruit that it produces is good offspring. Interesting. Now, because remember, the tree is a metaphor, and the fruit is not an actual fruit. But now, let's go over at least so far what we've been able to see. Okay, early man was naked. They didn't know they were naked. As the evolutionary biology shows and says that through sexual selection, the female of the species had the power to choose, basically because the males are competing for their affection, and then the women figured out, well, I have a better chance of producing good offspring, right? The fruit of the womb, the right, the woman's womb produces life, so good offspring is the fruit of the woman's womb. Interesting. The tree of life. The tree of life. Hmm. Wow. It's almost like hold on, I'm sorry, it's because these images are passing through my mind and I'm just trying to organize them real quick. Procreation, the ability to choose with who and when to have babies, compared to in a more wild state when mating just basically happens, randomly, and there's no selection, and there's no, maybe that has something to do um, with what the story is kind of trying to imply to us a little bit. Because look, it's a very short it's a very short story, so we do have to kind of fill in the gaps a lot, but not by making shit up, because we want to look at what evolutionary science tells us, right? We want to look at what the words are telling us too. And then of course we want to try to use our imagination as the but just by using the tools that we have at hand. Whatever this garden was, right? Could it be a state of being? So when we are, let's say, like when the apes are in nature, right? When the apes live in the jungle, they're in nature. They're among all the other animals. Now, predatory animals that hunt each other, they and the ones they hunt, they stay away from each other. They run from each other. But I think other animals that really don't have much to worry about from each other can coexist together. I think so that's almost like a paradise, let's say, in a time when man was one with the earth, one with the garden, one with you know, and then something happened to where we were separated from that union, and that union was that moment of separation was whatever happened after this fruit. Once it started reproducing this fruit, we were kicked out, right? The story says they were kicked out of this garden of paradise, kicked out. Now the story, we in our mind we want to imagine, you know, a couple and they got kicked out and they're wondering, and there's stories of, there's other apocryphal books about Adam and Eve, and they went and lived in the caves for a while, and then the kids, and then after the kids had offspring, then they came out from the caves. Oh, snap. Damn. So here's the thing is, I've read the apocryphal book of Adam and Eve. I can't remember the title of it, but I got it inside. But I do remember that significant part about once they left the garden, they lived in the caves. And then after certain generations or whatever, then they came out of the caves and into the plains. Holy moly, why didn't they add that to the Bible? Shit. Okay, maybe they did. No, it just says they just went west or east, or I don't know. That they just left. Now, let's use our mind here a little bit. Let's use our imagination. So when we were in a state that was more like the animals, right? When humans, way back, not 6,000 years ago. Remember, the Earth ain't 6,000 years. Way back. Humans were in a state with nature. They were like one with nature. It was a paradise, a garden. But something happened to humanity where we were exiled from this place, right? So when we start thinking of human evolution, whatever clicked in the mind, whatever started growing, the frontal lobe, the neocortex, whatever these things were, the brain started growing, right, the frontal lobe, the neocortex, and then you combine that with sexual selection, and then you combine that with survival of the species and the greatest whatever, right? Then you see that there's a change. Well, I guess evolutionary biology will tell us there was a change in the brain at some point, and when these other parts started getting activated to where now we can start controlling our behavior and those type of things. Forgive me, I don't have those names in front of me. I think it's the neocortex and the frontal lobe, certain parts of the brain that didn't exist, that we didn't have when way back in human history. In our early days of human, these parts of the brain started developing. You know, some sort of like retention of knowledge or something like that, because we look back and then our history of human history is all messed up because it's been erased, but from whatever we've been able to tell is that so humans started wearing skins at some point to stay warm and to to cover themselves. I don't know why not, maybe not to cover themselves because of embarrassment, but for warmth and protection, or from the elements or something like that. Maybe, who knows, right? But if we look at the evolutionary timeline in our mind, we can say, okay, a long time ago we were naked like apes, not from apes, like our modern apes. Humans used to look like that. Long time ago, right? And we didn't know what any of that. We didn't know nakedness. We didn't know what any of that meant, right? Because our mind hadn't developed enough yet. There wasn't sexual selection. There wasn't any of that stuff. But as the time moved on, the female of the species started tasting of this fruit of the tree of knowledge. And that, added to with some other evolutionary processes, seems to have really changed, maybe accelerated, maybe something, whatever it was that the female of the species did, maybe accelerated um, uh, evolution, right? Because now we are kicked out of this place where we were one with the garden, one with the animals, one with the earth. Now, and it says you can't return because of the cherubim with the flaming swords or whatever. That means we can never, humanity can never go back to that place, that state of being that was like a garden, that was like one with the earth. Humanity, modern humans, can never go back to that state of being because of something that happened to us. Something. And if we look at the evolutionary sciences, as well, the brain developed. When you started using tools and you started building shelters and you started making tribes, and you know as the so so the fruit of that tree of early knowledge that the early female of the species was tasting little pieces of. you know I like the big strong guy, let me go copulate with him. And then she saw the offspring. What? And the way the mind works too is even modern, like if you dig in a little bit to way parts of your brain, neurons are activated when you try something new. Even your mind is always evolving. So when you try something new, a new a new I don't know, sport or something, right? When you try something new, it activates parts of your brain that have yet been activated. And through evolutionary science, it's the same thing. When these female of the species started seeing, or somehow in their primitive mind, started seeing that the fruit that was being produced was good, it's that it embedded itself in the DNA or whatever, to where, oh wow, this is a good thing, let's continue to do it. So the story, that's a condensed version of humankind, somewhat, Adam and Eve, it's condensed into a little story about a couple and the ribs and the dirt and all this stuff and the dust, and it's a long story. The mankind story is long. The evolutionary story of mankind is long, and Adam and Eve just gives us a little snippet of it. Just but it embellishes parts of it because whoever wrote it, I mean, they're just trying to tell us something that was told to them, but buried deep within what was told to them was these little scientific clues, right? Now, back to right, the form. Um, God created Adam out of, and of course we're talking about Eve, but since we're there, to kind of give us a little more connection with the science, is when it says that God created man out of, right, Adam is man, not a man, but man, out of dirt, right? Some translations say dirt, some say dust, some say all these things, right? So which one is the literal word of God? Okay, let's generalize it. God made man out of the earth. He grabbed some dirt or earth and formed man from the earth. How clearer can that be? How more specific can that be? How come we can't see and say, wow, it is saying that mankind came from the earth, just the way the evolutionary sciences say. But no, our 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 ability to to divide ourselves and our willingness to join ranks on one side or the other make this it's bad for us because look, the words are right in front of us. The words are right in front of us. Man was formed out of the ground, out of the dirt, out of the earth, right? If God is some force that can't be named, right? That's eternal, this force that creates everything, okay, the universe, whatever, forces, gravity, pressure, whatever we want to call it, mankind came from the earth. Just as all other species that are in the water, all other species that are in on the land, and all other species that are in the air. Simply because this story is in a religious book, and simply because it is written the way it is, it confuses us. And then the blind folks leading many more blind folks will get up there and fill in the gaps and say the earth is 6,000 years old. This and man was formed boom like that because it was dirt, and then and God breathed into him. And okay, I don't think God wants us to walk around with our head up our rear ends all our lives. I think there's wisdom there for us to find. But we simply sit back and accept these interpretations and not question them. And if maybe you're scared to question them, hey, that's fine. But step out of that safety. Step out of that boat. Ask the questions to yourself. If your pastor don't know the answers, find them somewhere else. How could it be that now? Well, I understand because of the processes that we've been through. As the words are right there for us to understand. Mankind used to be naked at some point, and they didn't know they were naked. Este, there was a fruit that was a product of knowledge and wisdom, and it started from the female of the species. The female of the species did something, started doing something that brought it to the man, and whatever this thing was, it changed the course of human evolution, human history, to where we were kicked out. We were expelled from this place, from this state of being that was like one with the garden, one with the earth, with all the other animals, at peace, not at war with all the other creatures. We were once in that state of being, but through something that happened a long time ago in the human story, it changed that course to where we are not that what we used to be, one with the earth, one with all the other animals, like the ape, let's say. The modern ape is one with the world, one with the earth, one with the garden. He doesn't know he's naked. The ape doesn't know he's naked. It doesn't register. He doesn't need to know he's naked. Why? Because there's no conceptualization of any of that. But the human mind evolved to where it started conceiving these ideas, knowledge of of things to remember. I don't know. They started covering themselves. Early man started wearing skins. It says God gave them skins, but for some reason, early man started wearing clothing. But after the evolution of the mind to where they were no longer part of that garden. Some of these things, remember, we're talking metaphor, the garden metaphor, but we can associate, we can assume when by looking at the timeline of where humankind used to be. A long time ago, we were one with the earth. We were more like the ape. We were part of this garden. But once the human mind evolved, it was like we were kicked out of that place, and we can never go back. The cherubim or whatever, that's all it does. It tells us that there's a place that humankind can never go back because of what happened to the mind, because of that fruit that was tasted early on in human history. A metaphorical fruit that came from a tree that changed the course of human history. These tales, they tell us a lot. They tell us so much. They tell us so much, but it is us, it is I, it is me, right? Um, um, my mind and my life and my daily life is full of stuff where I can't even barely have enough time to sit down and think, much less dig deep into some biblical stories about creation or whatever, right? That's all of our stories. But if you make an effort and dedicate that time, mind you, I'm not talking about church. I'm not talking about, how we do it here. It's not what I'm talking about. No. When you dig deep in to these themes or subjects or whatever, if you want to find the answer, you have to do some work, right? So when the Christ says, knock and I will answer, that means, hey, you need to work for that answer. You need to do something, right? The knocking is you doing something. I want to know what Adam and Eve's story was telling us. That's what I wanted to know a while back. So I did the work. I jumped in. I learned the story and I said, okay, that's not enough. I can't just go by what the Bible tells me. Why? Because the story is this big. It's this big. It doesn't give us enough information. Now, when I read that story, if I read it through the lens, through a, like if I'm looking at it through a religiosity or religious lens, right, Sunday church lens, I am going to block out a lot of useful and valuable information, maybe, because I'm blocking myself into this church structure of what I've been taught, right? But if we step outside of that box that we might be in, right, that's them, we might be able to see, like, well, that's why I always tell you guys, look at things from a general standpoint. When you step outside of this box, right, the religious box, right, or the scientific box, step outside of those boxes. Look at everything combined and see what it tells you. It's going to scream stuff at you. Now, sometimes we're not able to step out of the box because we are so invested in one side or the other, right? But that also has to do a lot with what's going on inside of here, inside of our hearts and our minds. Because if I'm having issues at home, if I'm having issues at work or with my wife or whatever, is that I'm not gonna have time to sit and think and contemplate anything about creation or even rules that God, in quotes, tells us, the Ten Commandments, anything. I'm not gonna be able to think of anything. Why? Because I'm full of hate. I'm full of anger. I'm full of lust. I'm full of greed. I'm full of whatever, right? So, so, so in order for us to be able to start seeing these things, we need to work. And I sound like a broken record, but when we do, right, start purifying ourselves in the way we think, in the way we behave, right? Then it makes, when we humble ourselves, because hey, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. And when you tell yourself, when you allow yourself to know that you don't know anything, that's gonna help, help get you there. Because humility, I don't know. I want to find out. I don't know, but I want to find out. So what am I going to do? I'm going to search. I'm going to dig. I'm going to look at books. I'm going to read. I'm going to look at science. I'm going to look at religion. I'm going to see what other religions have to say. Because I want to know the answer. I want to know the answer. And through that digging, I think I've been able to. It's not that I've found it, it's that it's been revealed to me through what I've been able to dig. I don't know the entire story, but now we can say that, oh, maybe we have a better idea of some pieces of it. But we have to be honest with how we're thinking. Am I being biased, right? When I look at the story, am I being biased because I'm in the church, because I want to be a priest, because I'm a Catholic, because I'm a Christian, whatever? Am I being biased when I'm looking at the story? We got to think outside of that, right? No, 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 no. Humble ourselves. Step out and look at something in the generic sense, in the general sense, and then the words will jump out at you. But as long as you're boxed in, as long as you're caged in to one side or the other, even in the middle, the agnostic or the um, uh, atheist, whatever, you know, those are boxes too. We can box ourselves in these things that won't allow us to see a little further. The languages, the boxes of language, God, you know, what is God? It's like, what is he, a person in the sky? What? We're gonna dig into that. Not right now because we're focusing in on this whole thing about Adam and Eve. But do not box yourself in. Don't box yourself in. Step out of that box, out of that boat, out of that comfort zone, that out of that safety net. It's rough out there. Outside of that safety net, oh shit, I'm in my safety church box. It's crazy outside of that box. Yes, it is. But step out of your comfort zone. You'd be surprised what you may find out there. Really. I think if we allow ourselves to do that, to este, to step out, of this to be able to see things in a general manner, in a general sense, I think it'll help us a lot. If we work towards being able to allow ourselves to step outside of those boxes, to see things in a general manner, there's only positive, that comes out of that, because we'll be able to see a little bit clearer. But we have to remove, when we talk about removing the cobwebs out of our eyes, we're blind. you know I'm blind if I'm just in a box of the Bible. I'm blind if I'm just in a box of atheism. I'm blind if I'm just in a box of science. You know what I'm saying? We need to, you know remove those cobwebs, remove that blindfold so we can see. But it takes humility, it takes work, it takes some digging, it takes some work. But when you start seeing it a little bit clear, you're going to be like, whoa, why didn't I see that before? How come I couldn't see that before? Look, we went over the whole thing. How come I could never see that before? And look, I don't know all the answers. And I don't want to ever sound and assume that I do. But what we went over today seems pretty, on point, pretty plausible, pretty like right there, right? So one can assume like, okay, we might be kind of close. We might be kind of close to what the story of Adam and Eve is really trying to tell us. So, you know what? I think that'll be it for today. But I love this, dude. This is my absolute favorite. Like, I could go on and on, but we don't want to lose. We don't want to ramble too much, and we want to stay a little bit, a little pinpoint focus, because I'm freestyling. I'm not going off of any notes or anything. So yeah, I hope you like that. I can't wait to hear it myself. Tell you the truth. All right, guys. Well, I love you, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation that we had today. And I hope that maybe some of these points that we talked about kind of got your mind thinking a little bit, like, whoa, like, oh, dang. Man, I'd love to hear if it did, if it did kind of get you thinking about it a little bit. Because I was at that point too. I come from the church. Remember, I told you I used to want to be a pastor or a priest or whatever a long time ago. No, a pastor, not a priest. That's that. But I broke away from that years ago because I started seeing these things in a different manner, and it was some of this, like what we spoke about today, that really made me split away from the modern, seminary Christian, So yeah, but yes, I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. I enjoyed it a lot, and I can't wait to hear it. Really, like I'm a fan of. I mean, I listen to the show, of course, because I need to do edits and stuff. Pero I also listen as a fan sometimes because when we're flowing, I don't remember what the hell we talked about. Like I don't remember what the hell I said. I just said. I open myself up, and it's like the water just flows. You know what I'm saying? So I like to go back and listen sometimes. So that's I can't wait to do that. All right. So in the meantime, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please, please, please tell your friends. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button if you're on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, or if you're not on Facebook yet, or if you're on Facebook but haven't followed us yet, the links are in the descriptions for our Facebook, for our YouTube, and all that. So it'd be great you follow us there. We have stuff that's shareable on the Facebook. We have pictures, shareable quotes and stuff like that. Then on the YouTube we have clips. We are recording this show, so it will be up soon. But we have clips and full episodes there, so you want to subscribe there so you can get those videos too. I want to thank you guys because there's been more movement going on our pages, and now that we have the YouTube page rocking and rolling. And so there's been more going on there. So I want to thank you guys too. If you like what you heard, please tell your friends. If you think they're gonna like these type of conversations, hey, let them on to our show. Have them check us out and see what they think. What else? Emails in the description. I'd love to hear from you guys. You could shoot us a message on Facebook, Messenger, whatever the fuck. Go to the YouTube. You can leave whatever. Reach out to us. We're all over the place now. We're growing. I got the whole studio set up. It's 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 crazy. We're gonna talk about it soon, but I got the computer rocking. I got a couple sources of camera, a couple microphone sources. We're working on it. I got a bunch of new tech gear that I'm learning, so that's coming through. But the videos and everything are still gonna be rocking and rolling. All right, enough jibber jabber. Please, in the meantime, I want you to stay safe out there. I want you to continue knocking on them doors, you know, looking and seeking for answers, Continue to humble yourself, educate yourself, work hard for whatever it is that you want. You are unstoppable. You are unstoppable. All right, guys, take care of yourself. Stay safe. Reach out to us. Let us know what you think. I love you. That's it. All right. Peace out, guys.
This is Thesis.